Morning everybody. In this video I'm going to talk through how to answer this 6-mark evaluate question, which is evaluate whether the coronavirus epidemic will result in more inequality in the UK. Because it says evaluate, you need to make sure that you do these things. You have to make sure that you're showing your knowledge so you understand the theory. So in this case you know what inequality is, for example. You have to make sure that you're explaining as you go along. You need to make sure that you apply. So here that you're talking about hospitals and the jobs that people do and what people can afford, things like that. So real life examples. You also need to have economics terminology in your answer. So if you're talking about how much money people are getting for their job, you want to talk about income and what they're earning, for example. And finally, because it says evaluate, you need to include evaluation points in what you're writing. So essentially, you need to make sure that you're looking at the bigger picture and seeing whether the points that you make will always be true. And you could use terms like it depends. So you may say something, but then say this depends on X, Y, and Z. And then finally, you may choose to look at the short run and the long run and say how what you're saying may differ for the short run and the long run. So now I'm going to talk you through the answer that I've written here. But first of all, I just want us to look at the structure of what you can see in front of you because of what the answer actually looks like. So you can see really clearly there's one paragraph here which is setting out why it may increase inequality. Then there's a paragraph here about why actually inequality might decrease. And then at the end there's a conclusion. There isn't a set format for answering these questions, so you have to think about what's appropriate for the question that you're being asked. But in this case, this seemed quite a sensible way of laying it out. I actually took 7 minutes writing this. Obviously, I can write quite quickly because I've had lots of practice, but you'll see that it's really quite long. You may not be able to do as much as this, but you need to be aiming by the time you get to the exam to do something similar. And the answers that the exam board have shown, which are for full marks, are often quite detailed. So now I'll talk you through the answer, and as I'm going along I'll explain where you're getting the marks. So the epidemic has significantly reduced the UK's output, particularly during the lockdown period, meaning less workers have been required, increasing the number of people unemployed and decreasing the incomes of people being temporarily paid their salary by the government under the furlough scheme. That's what this is called, when they're being paid temporarily by the government. You don't need to know that, that's not on the specification. But this is just setting out the theory that because of the lockdown, the amount of output in the UK has gone down, and this means that less workers are required, so less people have got a job. And this is an example of using economics terminology and also showing that you understand the theory. Therefore, this will cause the amount these people can buy to fall, decreasing their standard of living and increasing inequality. So here I'm making sure that I'm coming back to the question. I'm saying this will increase inequality. So I haven't forgotten what the question is about. You need to always be thinking back to what is the question that I'm answering. And you'll see as well in all of this, I'm always building on what I'm saying. I'm not just making one statement. For instance, here this says meaning increasing and on it goes. And here this will cause decreasing, so I'm saying more. I'm not just saying one sentence, I'm explaining myself, making the sentence longer or having another sentence. So particularly if those in lower paid jobs such as retail assistants are in this position, this will widen the gap between those on higher incomes if they keep their job and others. Now I'm going to move on to the evaluation, but just to say here, this is very good application because I'm talking about a real life situation about retail assistants. So I'm talking about something that actually is happening in the real world. I'm not just writing down theory. So now some evaluation. However, those who are more highly paid may well lose their jobs where firms cut staff at all levels, reducing the impact on inequality. Additionally, some jobs which are lower paid have become vital during the pandemic, such as cleaners, delivery drivers and nurses. They may be less likely to lose their jobs and could arguably see an increase in their wage rate as demand for their labour increases. This would decrease inequality if their wage was then closer to others. So this is setting out the complete opposite argument, so that's part of the reason it's evaluation. And also this has detail, it's explained clearly, and also there's this application here about real life jobs that people may have. And I've made sure that I've come back to the question as I'm going along. The last paragraph is the conclusion. And it's nice and clear that it's the conclusion. It's a new paragraph and it starts with the word overall. Overall, the impact on inequality will depend on, this is what I said at the beginning, this is a good way of evaluating, how many low-paid jobs are lost relative to higher-paid jobs, and whether shortages of labour emerge in lower-paid jobs, increasing wages. The level of inequality will also depend on how the government chooses to spend during and in the aftermath of the epidemic, and how far this is designed to reduce inequality, and if so, over what time period. So what I've done here is I've said that it will really depend, the answer. We don't have a categoric answer to the question. It will depend on these different factors. And another way of doing the answer would have been to say that it definitely increases inequality or definitely decreases inequality. But it's also all right for your conclusion to say that the answer will depend on certain factors, which is what I've done here.